I'm Lana Hechtman Ayers, Managing Editor for MoonPath Press, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the book release reading for Oubliettes of Light by Lisa Ashley and Monster Galaxy by Cindy Veach. Lisa Ashley's imagistic poems speak of grief and difficulty with frankness and power that emanate a hard-won gratitude for life and all its shining possibilities. Cindy Veach's poetry is cheeky, honest, understated, wise, and packs a visceral wallop that will thrill readers. Both these women speak the truth of life and love and loss, a truth whose beauty we need right now more than ever in these troubling times. Poetry demonstrates our common humanity and brings us closer together, bridging our differences by demonstrating how much we share the same hopes for ourselves and our loved ones, how we suffer the same kinds of losses and strive to make our lives meaningful. Our first reader today is Lisa Ashley, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Lisa Ashley writes in her log home among the firs on Bainbridge Island in Washington, having found her way there from New York by way of Montana and Seattle. She navigates her life and garden with physical limitations, help from her husband, and unlimited imagination. She is a Pushcart Prize nominee who descends from Armenian genocide survivors. She has spent many years listening to and supporting incarcerated youth. She earned a BA in journalism from the University of Montana School of Journalism and a Master's of Divinity from Seattle University. Her poems can be found in such places as Willow's Wept Review, Juniper, Blue Heron Review, and many, many other journals. Oubliettes of Light is her first collection and was a finalist for the Sally Albizo Award 2024. Lisa, please read for us.
Thank you, Lana. I am looking at you as the main speaker. So how do I look at myself? What do I click on?
You're actually on the screen as you speak.
Okay. I will trust in the electronic goddesses. First, thank you, Lana, and thank you to the staff at MoonPath Press for making this book possible. And Cindy, thank you for being a partner with me today. It's a real honor to be with you because of your really excellent work. And second, thank you to my family and friends who are here today with me. As I said earlier, when I was choking up, I'm still choking up. It just means so much to me. And there are many folks I know who will be listening to the recording later because they couldn't make it today. And so, whew, thank you. Thank you very much. This first collection is a loosely woven tapestry of my life experiences that the tapestry begins with my Armenian ancestors and concludes in present time. It's an exploration of memories and memories I do not have. By that I mean, what does one do if there are large black holes in one's history? How do those not memories become part of one's understanding of one's roots and what is revealed to the self from the effort of delving into the past? So I'll begin with the first poem in the book. And I don't know if any of you have books with you, but if you're looking at a book, my book, then it's on page 3. The first poem is titled Grandmother's Story Stone, and it is a story about my Armenian grandmother as I perceived her when I was a child. Grandmother's Story Stone. I know no Armenian, she no English. Like a pupil at attention, she sits in her straight chair by the cook stove, shuffles pages back to front in her Armenian Bible. She mutters, gnarled fingers rowing. Her black lace-up shoes clunk back and forth across scrubbed linoleum. Her cotton stockings sloop into ankle bracelets. She slings onions into her bib apron from a bushel basket. Her sun-browned hands tuck grape leaves around rice, pry up the stove lid, push in kindling sticks. Her whiskers sprout from greasy wrinkles, garlic, olive oil, mint, her perfume. I brace for her kiss. When she speaks with my father, my ears tune the soft guttering. I whisper behind my hand, scubbity, scubbity, scubbity. Memories ghost August sunlight slant through blinds. Stories never told collide in the parlor, migrate behind the curio cabinet glass door, colonize her mementos with silence. I beseech her opaque story stone to speak, like those who sucked stones in the Syrian desert. I'm thirsty for more. Her voice roosts inside me, pricks my skin, a straight pin lost in my skirt's hem. And my grandmother was indeed a survivor of the genocide, as was my grandfather. The next poem is on page 4. Mother dances the blues. She opens her gold lipstick brush, flicks it against the red wax pillar risen from its shiny case, outlines her mouth, fills in her lips, smacks them together, her kiss on a tissue, a red rose discarded. Her music, Saturday afternoons, Glenn Miller, Harry James, Tommy Dorsey, sends her sashaying, snicking her tongue against her teeth, matching the rhythm, heel and toe. Weekdays, she shuffles in the kitchen door at 6. We kids clamor like an out-of-control Carillon. If he is home, he complains. She failed to iron his shirt, make the bed, sweep up. She crosses the patched linoleum, takes down her glass, pours her scotch. Ice clinking, ghost ship unanchored. She slips from him, sails out beyond us all. I'm next going to read the next poem in the book on page 5. It's titled Sarma. Sarma is the Armenian dish similar to the Greek domades. It's a dish of cooked rice and onions and tomatoes that it gets wrapped up in grape leaves. And my father's mother, the grandmother I just read about, taught him how to make it, and we made it as kids growing up. Sarma. We trudge in, conscripted from our play, sit at the table and begin our work. Father's impatience wraps around his jeers as he shows us how it is done. Our small fingers plug away at stacks of brined grape leaves, rumpled, easily torn. Each leaf pile shrinks, grows tall again down the long afternoon. Rice cooked in olive oil, canned tomatoes, and chopped onions in a sticky mound in the massive frying pan ringed with spoons. There is a particular tension that holds the leaves, precision in folding left and right to center. A slight pressure rolls the rice in the leaf without breakage. I lick my fingers for the salt, my secret sealed, his betrayal wrapped in finger-thick rolls. We stack the cigars, his name for them, round and round in a big pot, like mossed stones in our old well. Of all the dishes his mother taught him, this is my favorite, fulcrum to lost childhood time and stomachs filled. I tuck and roll, no longer hear his voice. The fat green stubs stew gently over a low gas flame. Lemon tang fills the house. I wait for the slick, salty morsels, the simple comfort of warm rice. Thank you. Next poem is on page 13 and is titled Their Boots and Spikes. The first word in the first line is pickelhaub, and that is the pickelhaub spikes were the spikes on the helmets of the German soldiers in World War I. Their boots and spikes. Pickelhaub spikes on their helmets, the ghost soldiers come again. They crowd the top of the stairs. Heavy boots stomp down and down. My three sisters and I huddle in the back corner of the coal cellar, waiting for the metal latch to lift on the thick oak door. Will they find us if we stop breathing? Yes, they will pull the light string. I spread my body as wide as it will go in front of my sisters. I'm sweating. I startle awake, alone in the small bedroom just off the dining room, where morning after morning I hear his footsteps approaching. One parent asleep, one awake, pushing the door open across red linoleum, rubber doorstop sliding with a soft swish. His hands, the boots and spikes. This next poem, excuse me, is lighter and a dear memory I had from childhood. And it's on page 25 and it's titled The Button Jar. The button jar. She sits cross-legged on the rag rug, sorts small whites, blues, greens, 4 holers from grandpa's old shirts, 2 holed pearl buttons from sheer blouses, shoe buttons with round leather tops and metal loops like miniature black mushrooms. Her favorites, what Graham calls the dressy ones, silver buttons like woven straw baskets, pink bows saved for her doll's clothes, tiny red ones like wild strawberries in the woods, amber ovals, a yellow butterfly alone in the crowd. She arranges them like Halloween candy, the simple rhythm of piles and colors, shapes. She fingers the buttons, thumbs their shallow dips, covers pearlescence of abalone discs, reclaimed from sweaters and worn out dresses, rubs them gently like tiny worry stones. She scoops them up, puts them in the jar, puts the jar back in its place. The buttons live inside the sewing cabinet with the hooks and eyes, zippers, scissors, spools of colored thread on tilted nails. What's left behind are the stories, she tells herself, of families that wore them, how they lived in a big glass house all jumbled together, like hers, needing to be seen, needing to be sorted. Thank you. Page 18, another childhood memory poem. A single icicle. Icicles lined the gutters of our house in New York farm country. Thick as our arms, they reached into the snowbanks below. We plucked the smaller icicles, sucked them until our lips turned blue, so numb we couldn't form our words. In those days, winter arrived early, stayed for months. We had sword fights. Our ice blades fused to our mittens as we became the cold. We knocked the icicles down with snowballs, smashing holes in the line like a TV prison cell breakout. Our screams of triumph when a whole wall came splintering down. Now, near the Salish Sea, winter makes its evanescent visit. A week in February when winds from the Fraser Valley swoop down upon us. It lasts just long enough for a single icicle to form outside my window, rainwater dripping and freezing to make its point. My next poem on page 37 is Night Sky. When I was young and our son was small, you painted the heavens on his bedroom ceiling in fluorescent paint so the stars would shine all night. And now, when I am old and pierced with pain, you clean the house and hang the laundry, wash the dishes every night, and you say that's fair since I cook our dinner. And this love you hold for me is a boundless miracle, like the night sky I cannot do without. Excuse me. I just have a couple more. This one is on page 39. It's titled What's Broken, after the poem by Dorianne Lux, also titled What's Broken. What's Broken, after Dorianne Lux. The water in the cove cracked diamonds. The red metal flag from the mailbox. The ceramic bowl into shards, grapefruit rolling everywhere. The joint in my left foot between the calcaneus and cuboid bones. Broken, the sunflower head heavy bent, opium poppy balls leaning, petals long gone. Years ago, my father's manual single blade cultivator pushing hard clay. Broken, the birthday transistor radio my brother hurled at the kitchen wall. What hasn't been rent, divided, split, broken, the days into hours, the hours down into time? I lie in bed, count 10 different birds eating suet and seeds, my bones fusing. And for my last one, on page 26. This is titled The Blessing of the Onions. The Blessing of the Onions. Father smells of raw onion, sun-heated peat, beer sweat. His thick hand jerks the scallions one by one from stony soil. He brushes dirt from roots, shreds the outer white-green layers, bites it through. Molars grind hot fibers to pulp. The flash of gold between his two front teeth. We thin the long row. Onion skins and grit dust my hair. His rants against my mother cascade over my small bent back. We bind the onions into bunches. Each morning we basket them in the hutch at road's edge. In the humid dusk, he collects coins from the rusty coffee can, pockets his petty hoard. In winter, the onions bushel, intimate and silent in the wire cellar bin. Now I slice them into medallions, slant fractions, pungent perfume clouds my kitchen. The onions come each year out of earth into body, bring tears and succor, blessing the sauce and stir fry. My knife bites in peace against the wood. Sweetness and fire feed me. Thank you. So ends Lisa's reading.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful reading, Lisa. We used to have icicle sword fights in New York where I grew up. Just lovely. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Cindy, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cindy. Cindy Veach is the author of 3 full-length poetry collections, including Monster Galaxy from MoonPath, which was a finalist for the Sally Albizo Award, Her Kind from Cavan Carey Press, an Eric Hoffer Montaigne Medal finalist, and Gloved Against Blood from Cavan Carey, a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize, and a Massachusetts Center for the Book Must Read. Her poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, North American Review, Poet Lore, and many other publications. Cindy received an MFA from the University of Oregon, where she was an assistant poetry editor for Northwest Review. She is the poetry editor of Mom Egg Review. After living on Boston's North Shore for 30 years, Cindy resides in the Seattle area. Cindy, please unmute and read for us.
Thank you, Lana. And thank you, Lisa, for your beautiful reading. I've just finished your book, and it's really wonderful to hear the poems in your own voice. So it really brings it alive. I want to thank Lana and MoonPath Press for bringing Monster Galaxy into the world, and thank everybody who is here. I'm really honored. So a little bit about this book. This book is really how I grieved my father, who passed in 2019. I adored him, and his passing was hard to fathom. My grief triggered an examination of my girlhood, my upbringing, and it became a portal for self-discovery and a way to navigate loss. It caused me to, I guess, kind of look at everything through a new lens, acknowledging my father's flaws and my own internalized monsters. So the book is divided into 3 sections, sort of family of origin and shame, and then movement, and then transitioning, which is mothering and aging. So I've kind of selected some poems that move around into the different parts of the book. Just starting my timer. The first poem I'll read, can everybody hear me okay? The first poem I read, the form is taken from a poem by Betsy Scholl called Genealogy, and it opens the book. A partial catalog of my monsters. One of my monsters is the flesh-eating Dimetron. One is a giant chameleon with a 20-foot tongue. One takes the shape of a man with a dirk in my girlhood bedroom. One is the devil Dementia, who took his prehensile tentacle, pried the latch, and emptied my mother. One of my monsters is the good girl. She's huge like a dirigible, huge like the Jolly Green Giant. She can't pick up a pin, can't make a move without wrecking her house. One is the other mother. She slapped her child for biting the baby she nearly bled out to birth. Thus, the monster called shame. One is the crone who begat the bone vampire, who feasts on spine, hip, femoral neck. One is forgetting, the other remembering. She was a girl, waving to her father, leaving on a trip. His promise to bring her back little hotel soaps, which those soaps don't exist anymore. The hotels don't have them. Even now, I'm ashamed. One slice of bologna between white bread, slicked with margarine. One navel orange. I prayed for a trade-worthy brown bag lunch. I prayed for the miracle of a perfectly pressed school uniform, knife pleats like the other girl. Were my parents arguing over bills again? Would Santa bring a navy blue double-breasted maxi coat like Laura's, her grosgrain ribbons and blonde pin curls? When I was a girl, alone in the dankness of our basement, I pushed a pussy willow catkin up my nose to see if it would fit. No, I pushed myself into the furred bud to see if I would fit. Window. The furnace works overtime while sunlight paints bright bars on polished hardwood. The whole country gripped with bitter cold, even the South where I'm a visitor. In the first house I remember, one window held a lintel transom of leaded glass. Prisms flew around that room, gracing every member of my family, reaching the darkest corners. Even dust motes sparkled like something precious. This held no meaning for me. I was not familiar with the way things will end. This next poem, I was on a walk and I saw a cardinal and I was trying to get my phone out to take a picture of it. And the bird sang, and it was, anyway, you'll read it, you'll hear about it in the poem, but that was the origin of this poem. The Cardinal and His Song. The cardinal sang out when I fumbled for my phone, and the first time I connected this bird with that song, it was like I learned a new word, like a light. I didn't get a picture of the cardinal. He crossed the street for another bird. Wait, there's something missing in this story. Let me go back and start over. My father never told me he loved me. He could not speak those words. Now I'll know the cardinal by his song. Okay, this is just one part of the story that was missing. Until you know something, you have no idea. If I said I love you, my father would say, right back at you. Until the day he died, I hoped he'd say, I'm sorry, but part of this story is still missing. For a moment on the sidewalk when I connected the cardinal with his song, I wondered, is this what could have been? This felt like walking on the edge of an envelope. So I'm afraid I just added a little blood to this story. Make no mistake, from here on out, I will know him by that song. What else have I missed? Hold on, let me go back. I think I need to start over. Okay, I've got the wrong. Oh, here it is. Challenger. 3 decades later, I return to where I once lived and drive the 20 miles, Port Ludlow to Port Townsend, past the spot I was passing, driving our old gray bug, 8 months pregnant with my first, when the news came over the radio, news I strained to hear, twisting the dial, thinking first of the teacher astronaut, a young mother of 2, and then of my unborn child, safe, contained. In fact, he was kicking me, seatbelt pressing into us. And then I kept driving toward my appointment, toward my own motherhood. I kept driving as the capsule was falling, as the teachers, children, husband, parents stood in the stands watching. It turns out the crew was alive the whole time the vessel was descending, hurtling toward home, toward the waiting water. Would knowing this have changed anything? All these years I've been guilty of nothing but happiness, conifer clouds, sneak peeks of sky. Just a little background on this next poem. I don't know if you've heard of the artist Al Hirschfeld, but when I was growing up, he sketched line drawings of famous people that were published in the New York Times on Sundays. And he would hide his daughter's name, Nina, in these drawings, and there'd be a little number at the bottom of the picture, you know, like a 3 or 4, and that meant there were 3 Ninas hidden in the drawing. Bulletproof. Before my belly was a kiln, before episiotomy, before hemorrhage, years before my brother started spiking his thermos with Absolute, before my mother forgot, before my father died, Al Hirschfeld hid his daughter's name in drawings of Marilyn, Elvis, Ella, Ringo Starr. Nina's concealed in gams and jowls. Harmless insanity, he called it. Long before I left the church, before my children left home. And yes, it's true that the Army used Al's Ninas to train bomber pilots to spot their targets. And yes, I've now lived long enough to know what I did not know then, that he objected to his art being used to kill people, drew his daughter with no Ninas, and named it Nina's Revenge. That some nights my father took off to wander Times Square, eat at an automat, or so he said. And yes, maybe my brother was right, that he wasn't always true. But some memories are bulletproof. I look back and long for the Sundays. My father came home with bagels and the New York Times, and we'd spend all morning searching for the Ninas in that week's Hirschfeld drawing. I'm gonna check my time. Okay. About a few months after my dad passed away, there was some news coverage about a rare monster galaxy, they called it, that had been discovered, and it was apparently it's 12 billion years old, and they said they caught it in its inactive phase, but it was unknown what was going to happen to it in the future. So that article triggered this poem. Legacy. I don't know what happened to the cast iron skillets my father collected from thrift shops around Chicago, rusted, in need of steel wool, olive oil, heat. When I come across cast iron sets in the Vermont Country Store catalog, I turn the page. It's raining, gloomy, but there's a snow moon coming, a welcome respite from the darkness. My father was overprotective, paranoid, deadbolt, door chain, secret knock. No place was safe. I was afraid to go anywhere alone. He left me before the discovery of a rare monster galaxy, a massive blaze of suns that spawned in the early universe, then died. Even now, its dark matter looms in the cosmos, isolated, no longer birthing stars. If there is life after death, what is this galaxy's fate? I followed his instructions to a T, and yet his carbon, his dust. Will I ever know what happened to those skillets, their constellation of crumbs, congealed grease, droplets of condensation quivering? This patch where the light cannot reach. I see a candelabra of branches, of birds, crossing landscapes, flickering above fences, laying rails down on so white snow, on cold, so cold. That tatted freight train flashing past, shadow boxing, tunnel, trestle, approaching Minneapolis or any city's welcome mat of skyscraper penumbras. I see if I sit on a park bench in memory of a late afternoon in winter, black stripes like a zebra on the loose, and a can of pop someone left, its dark ellipse, its crush. I see ducks casting over the iced mill pond, below the malto meal plant, low banks of stubble and freeze. Shadow's shadow of daddy longlegs. Oh, to be a thing that doesn't subscribe to age or gender. I tissue its delicate legs. I crush. There was supposed to be a father in this poem. So I've got just two more that I'll read. Letter to the Fog. The air is thick with you. Trees drip, drip, drip with you. I'm wearing what I slept in, the book on my lap gone limp with you. A lady cardinal lands on the oilcloth where last night, under a strawberry moon in Venus, I shelled a lobster I let the supermarket kill. Sweet meat, ruby roe. A fairy blows one long, low note, you, you, you. I love an anchor, but I will not partner again. I'm happy here alone, swathed in your all-night dress. And this is the last one. And this poem is inspired and borrows from a poem by Susan Rich, who's here, titled Booketto, which is about learning a new word. A Glaikwyf. Outside my window, men are repainting the crosswalk, putting new lines over old lines. I learned a new word today, an old English word, a Glaikwyf. A monster woman, troll lady, wretch, hag. Think the grand high witch of all the world. Think Grendel's no-name mother. And then I learned that this word is the feminine form of a Glaika, a hero, a valiant warrior. Why am I not surprised? I know these tropes, the monster mother, the sexless crone, toothy, bald, clawed, toeless child hater, child eater. If all witches are women, as Roald Dahl wrote, then I claim that pedigree. But explain why gender makes me witch, not warrior, hag, not hero. What patriarchal alchemy creates monsters out of what I'm supposed to be versus what I am? I've tried to be good, to exist between the lines, yet look at me, my galaxy of monsters. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for that marvelous reading. Oh, I can't even pronounce that word, but what a great the way you bring all these images together. Beautiful work. And now I'd like to open it up to our audience if they'd like to make comments for our poets or ask questions by raising your virtual hand. If you raise your real hand, I may not see you, but someone else will and they'll let me know. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your virtual hand and or has any comments. And I'm not seeing any hands. Let's see. I can't see any hands. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask my question, which is I wanted to show you these beautiful books. And I don't know if you can see them very well because Zoom tends to blur things a little bit. But these beautiful, beautiful books, beautiful covers. So I wanted to ask both of our poets how they went about envisioning what kind of image would fit with their collection for the covers. I always find that fascinating. I'm obsessed with book covers myself as a reader, and I just wanted to know what made you select the kind of image that you did. So either of you like to answer.
Well, I'll go. So the title, Oubliettes of Light, an oubliette is a French dungeon that was built kind of like a really deep well. And so the only light was a hole at the top. And it's a pretty dark image. But I feel like I chose it as a title because I added the of light, oubliettes of light, because I want to my poems bring bring light into a lot of shadowed places. So the image that was in my mind for the cover was when you're in the forest and the sun comes through like in a beam sort of, and I talked in email to Lana about it, and she sent some possible images, and the one that's on the cover seemed to me to be absolutely perfect because it comes in at a slant, and also it's a northwest forest scene in my appreciation of the photo. So it just worked really, really nicely. And when the cover was mocked up for me to approve, I was thrilled. It really captures the idea that light can alter shadow and bring life in the middle of a dark forest. So
I love the way you speak about the light, bringing light to dark subjects. And the cover image, the photographer of this beautiful image is actually another MoonPath Press poet named C.L. Downing. So it was kind of kismet, I think, that I got to offer one of her photos as a possibility.
and the title of the photo is The Sacred.
Yeah.
Well, really, I didn't know that when I selected it. So that's pretty interesting. Synchronicity thing.
Yeah. It was just meant to be.
Right.
And what about you, Cindy?
So I knew what I didn't want for the cover, which I didn't want a galaxy, basically a picture of a galaxy. But I wasn't sure what I wanted. So I did a lot of searching online and joined Pinterest, which I had not been a member of, and started, searching for things there and playing around and playing around. And then I don't know, I found this picture, not even, just randomly, this Gustav Klimt, it's called Pallas Athena. And I fell in love with it. And you can't tell here, but behind the figure, there's like monsters. There's like an owl and there's a hand. There's figures that are sort of blurred in the background. And then, the woman on the front. So to me, it was just, I guess when you know something, it was perfect for the cover. And that was it. It was a done deal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, this wasn't a painting I had been familiar with before, and I'm so glad to have known it. But the to me, the cover like is a woman claiming power after going to some really dark places,
Yeah.
both real and emotional. And so I thought that really makes sense.
Yeah. It
But
was.
it's always a surprise to see what a poet chooses. So I have another kind of quickish question for both of you. You're both in different places. So Lisa, this is your first full-length collection, and Cindy, this is your third. And just for the first full-length collection, is the process what you imagined it would be? What would you like other poets to know about the process of getting your first book out?
Well, first of all, I highly recommend MoonPath. It was a wonderful, Lana, you've been so supportive. And as a newbie in the publishing world of, getting a book out and done and out, I had lots of questions, and Lana had lots of patience and answers for me. So I learned a lot in this first process, and I'm grateful. I started writing poetry in 2014, so I haven't written for very many years. And before that, I did nothing with poetry. I barely read it. I didn't study it. I was in journalism. I did business writing and all kinds of, prose. And I never thought I could ever write a poem. I thought, that's not me and that's totally out of my realm. But eventually I found myself here 10 years later. And I'm still kind of trying to grasp what it means to have this book, in my hands. I'm still trying to kind of embody it. As far as what I would want other poets to know, first, I remember some pieces of advice from other wonderful poet friends who helped me along the way. My editor, Bethany Reed, who is also a MoonPath Press author and the winner of the Sally Albizo Award in 2023, um, taught me many things. And one of the things I was taught by so many is to, when you work on each of your poems, make sure you're truly proud of every poem you choose to put in your manuscript. And that's a tricky word, proud, You have to think about that for a minute. And I think I'm proud of every poem in this manuscript in the end. But it took about 2 years to get there in terms of just working on the book. Another thing I learned is, work with an editor if you can. Bethany and I worked on individual poems, and then we worked on she taught me a lot about how the arc of a manuscript can work. And along with many other people, like the book that Susan Rich and Kelly Agadon wrote on demystifying the manuscript. They didn't write it, but they edited it, and it's a lot of good essays in there. I learned a lot. And then, so work with an editor if you can. Ask other poets to read your manuscript and give you feedback. My newfound poet friend, the wonderful Lilo Way, read my book and spent a lot of time going over it with me. And even if you don't always agree with everything someone tells you, you learn anyway. I mean, it enhances the overall manuscript, regardless of whether you take the advice or don't. And I took most of it. uh, I guess one of the important things I learned was to research the presses that you think you want to submit to before you submit to them. If you try to find through other poets who they, notice who publishes them, questions about it, but go online and really look them up and, see what their reputation is, see if you can find out how they work with you in terms of their contract requirements and what they offer you in terms of support. And I found the perfect press for me. So, but research it so that you aren't taken by surprise somewhere in your process. And then the last thing I'll say about submitting a manuscript or putting together a book, be patient and be persistent. If at first you don't succeed, submit, submit, submit again. And incorporate whatever you learn along the way in your revised manuscripts, it'll only make it better, and you will find a publisher. You will be published eventually. So that's
That's
about, that's about all I could.
that's wonderful advice. And I just want to say, um, uh, I don't think it matters whether you've been writing 5 months or 50 years. If you're a poet, eventually it's got to come out. It may not come out when you're a 5-year-old like it did for me. It may come out when you're much older. But I feel like if you're a poet, you've always been a poet, whether you're putting the words on paper or not. And eventually you get to it. The other thing is, Lisa, it's just such an incredible honor to publish a poet's first book. I mean, I feel like I've been entrusted with, just this incredible blessing, this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece of work that I get to say I published. And it's an incredible honor. And every book, whether it be the first book or the next book, is an honor. But there's something so special about presenting a poet's first book that feels like, you know, I remember how it felt for me when I got my first book published. It feels like my words are speaking to someone and someone is listening. And that's just, that's just an incredible feeling. So thank you for that honor. And thank you for the great advice. Um, and what about you, Cindy? How does it feel? Your third, this is your third book. What advice and what would you tell people about successive books?
Well, I do want to say that Lisa and I are similar in that we published our first books later in life, because I was, I think, 63 or 64 when my first book came out. And that was because I took like a 20-year hiatus when I, was raising children and working a corporate job. So it's never too late. That's my advice. It's never too late. This book, well, it feels different because my second book came out during the pandemic, 2021, and I had just moved to the Seattle area, or returned here after 30 years in Boston. And so there really were no in-person readings. I think I did one. And I didn't really have a community here. I knew Susan Rich, who's here, and very few people. So I didn't really have a community. So this book feels, well, first of all, being published with the Pacific Northwest Press, I feel like this is just, a wonderful community, and it makes me feel like I belong out here. So that was really special. And then, I'm going to have the opportunity to read in person from this book, which I didn't have with the second. So that feels really good. I agree with some of the advice Lisa gave. So work with an editor, which I worked with Susan Rich on all 3 of my books. And you just have to persist. I mean, I think that is very good advice, is that you need to persist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, and I just feel like every poet that MoonPath gets to publish is just so incredibly gifted and wonderful and special. And it feels like their books coming into the world, whether they're with MoonPath Press or any other press, just the fact that they're here and out in the world for people to see is really creating more beauty in the world. I say that all the time, and I really do think it. I really believe it. I think that poetry makes us more compassionate human beings, and it's such a gift to be able to share our humanity in this way. And for me to publish, just a tiny fraction of the tremendous talent in the Pacific Northwest is a gift. And thank you so much for that advice. Yeah, I really think persistence is key. It took me 75 tries to get my first book published. 75 tries. Think about that. So, persistence, persistence. Before we go, and we're about to go, I want to give each poet the opportunity to read one last poem for us today. Lisa, would you like to read a last poem for today?
I'd be happy to, Lana. And thank you to everybody once again for being here. It's really meaningful to me. And thank you, Cindy. I loved hearing I've been reading your book, and I think I've read everything, and so the poems were familiar, but again, hearing them in the poet's voice makes a big difference. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you. My last poem is titled Crown Shyness. It has an epigraph. Trees are poems the earth writes upon the sky. Khalil Gibran. Trees talk below ground, web a wide net of kin recognition in the dark. Sisters at a reunion, they chat, feed one another, share water. Above ground, birch trees glint white, a family gathering. At their crowns, they connect without touching. Branches channel like braids of the Madison River. Trees gap for safety, disease prevention, or to avoid colliding in storms. It's the idea, it's the idea of collaboration I like most. Sightless, they saturate forest sky. Lying on my back, I see their oubliettes of light. In the stillness, I hear them breathe for me, feel their silent pull like a prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Cindy?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming. And Lisa, it was such a pleasure to read with you and to know you now.
Yeah,
You.
I agree.
So the poem I'm going to read, a few years ago, usually every April, National Poetry Month, I've been doing a poem a day with two friends, January Gill O'Neill and Jennifer Martelli, who I co-edit Mom Egg Review with. And there was an article, a Yahoo article, about a woman who was sadly swallowed by a python when she went to check on her cornfield. And we all wrote a poem about this. So I'm going to read mine. The Woman Who Swallowed a Python. A woman went into her cornfield and swallowed a python. The cobs were frightened. Even wild boars ran away. Inside every woman there are monsters. A woman can swallow and swallow. She can choke down her truth for 100 reasons. Unzip her and meet the beasts. Follow my footsteps. Here are the things you will need: flashlight, slippers, machete. Come alone. If you're lucky, you will find her. There will be questions. Can a woman choke down shame? Can a woman choke down her bones, her mind? There will be speculation. Who swallowed whom? Is there a woman inside every monster, or monsters inside every woman? What if both things can be true? A reticulation of wrinkles and collagen, wisdom and faux pas, fear and ferocity. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Beautiful reading, both of you. Thank you again so much to our poets, Lisa Ashley and Cindy Veach. And thanks to all of you in our audience for being here. A poem is only ever truly complete when it has a reader or a listener. Poetry is meant to be enjoyed by all and connects us in community. Please support our poets by getting copies of their books available through the poets themselves or from your favorite bookstores, either independent brick and mortar stores or online bookshops. And I hope that some of you who are poetry lovers will join us again in 3 weeks on Saturday, June 7th at a special time, 11 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday, for a poetry reading from our mother press, Concrete Wolf Press, which is the mother of MoonPath Press. And those two poets who will be reading have ties to the Pacific Northwest. Chris Dahl, The winner of the Concrete Wolf Lewis Award lives in Olympia, Washington, and is part of the Olympia Poetry Network board. And Jennifer Saunders, who won the Concrete Wolf Chapbook Award, holds an MFA from Pacific University in Oregon and lives in Switzerland, which is why we needed to do the time adjustment so it's not the middle of night when she's reading. So I hope you'll tune in for that reading. And until next time, may you find poetry everywhere you look and hope renewed with each and every morning. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.
Thank you, Lana. Bye, everybody.